Hi everyone, I'm JD from Willowbound Journals. I am back again with the last magazine that I will be cutting up, looking for floral images to add to journals as journal cards. So this one is a rose magazine, and I got this, like the other ones, from an op shop. It was in a free box, so definitely pick those up. I got 4 in total, and in previous videos I've shown how I've cut up each magazine and turned them into journal cards. Basically what I do is I just sew them onto coffee dyed paper, cut around the edges, and that way you can tuck them into pockets or paper clip them into your journals, and on the back you can write on them. So I do love that they're decorative on the front, but they're useful and you can write on them on the back. So this one had quite a lot of beautiful images. This magazine in particular was quite a beautiful magazine, the way it's formatted, the way it's designed and laid out. So I really enjoyed going through this one. The presentation looks more like a book in a way. And I'm just cutting out this lovely border floral strip. I thought that might look good as a pocket sewn into a journal on a page, or even for me to make a floral collage, because I'm always thinking of cutting out images for my own personal journaling too whenever I go through magazines. And I especially love doing collage when I'm doing my altered book journals and my inspiration journal. It's just fun to put all these visual elements onto the page that give me joy. So I always like the idea as well of doing a page or documenting somewhere on a journal page the projects that I make or the crafty things that I'm doing. So for today, for example, I could cut out a floral image, one of these images in this magazine, stick that on the page of my journal, and that can remind me, oh yeah, today or that day, that was when I was cutting out images from a magazine, or that was the day that I was looking through a rose magazine. And I could either just cut out one image and put that on the page to represent that, or I could collage a whole page of images together and let that be a reminder to me of what I did. And I kind of like the idea of doing that as well, just as its own sort of thing, as its own art journal page. I always have this idea that I will want to art journal. It just never quite happens. I collect all these things, I cut all sorts of things out, and I have folders with images and words and pictures, photos, ephemera, always thinking that one day I will turn that into a page spread, and I want to. Just never quite happens. Maybe this is the year, maybe I'll try it, not too sure. But anyway, going through, and you can see just how many lovely images there are and how many lovely pages there are. So halfway through this process, I think it was about halfway through or even towards the end, I started realizing, wow, there are some really lovely pages. I think there's enough to make a journal. And I found some images especially that lent themselves towards a journal cover, and then all of a sudden I was getting super inspired, and I was no longer just looking for journal cards, images for journal cards. Now I was also looking for pages to become a rose journal, and I've actually already made that journal now. I got on such a roll. That's what inspiration can do, right? You just get all this creative energy and a project comes together. So once I found enough pages out of this magazine to be my feature pages, I then created my cover, put together all the pages, and created my rose journal. I also used some of the journal cards from here to put into the journal, and included some other rose ephemera that I had in my stash. And roses are just one of those classic flowers. I guess it will be one of my favorite flowers always. It's never been my favorite, but it's like Cinderella. This is how I think of it. So with the fairy tales, Disney fairy tales, I've always grown up with Disney and fairy tales and the Disney princesses. And like Cinderella was probably the first one that I became aware of, and it's a classic, and I will always love Cinderella, but I would never say Cinderella is my favorite of the Disney princesses or the movies. I would always say it was something like, I don't know, Little Mermaid or Aladdin or whatever. But Cinderella is one of those ones that's just a classic, a staple of my childhood, and therefore one of my favorites in that way. So that's the same with roses. It's just the flower. Like Cinderella is the fairy tale princess, the quintessential one. That's how I think of roses. It's never been my favorite, but I've always loved roses and always will. They're very sentimental to me. My grandma had a rose garden, and whenever we left her house, she'd be like, "Oh, I'll cut a rose for you to take home," things like that. And yeah, my mom had roses, and just roses. They are a stunning, beautiful flower, and I love that there's so many different colours, and I went through phases where I originally liked yellow ones, and then I liked red ones, and then I liked white ones. In this particular magazine, I cut out most of the pink ones, or removed most of the pink rose pages for my rose garden journal that I made. And yeah, I will share a flip through of that eventually, or maybe it's already gone up. I'm not too sure. With my videos, there's always a backlog, and I'm not quite sure the order that they come out in. But yeah, I had fun making that journal, and hope you can see that whenever the flip through goes up, if it hasn't already gone up already. Yeah, it was just, I love getting so inspired, and I love when it has that personal connection, and it just carries you through when you're making a journal. I love putting your story into a journal and having that expressed, and it might not be, explicit or anything, but I know it. I know what's gone into that journal. I know all of the memories and all of the sentimentality that has gone into that journal. And I hope it becomes a beautiful canvas for someone else to use and journal in, whether they love roses or whether they have their own stories of roses, or if they just think they're pretty. I love how our own creations can become part of someone else's story, but then it does become their story. It's not about our story anymore. We release the art, we release the creation, it goes out into the world, and then it becomes whatever it is for someone else. And I love that it's just dynamic and living and breathing, this really cool co-creation type of thing. I love that page with the arch, by the way. I think I skipped it. So with this magazine, I flip back and forth, and I think I go through it maybe like 4 or 5 times, because I am looking for enough pages to go into the journal. And also with the journal cards later on, I think in a different video, I show how I actually make my journal cards, just in case anyone's interested in that process. It's very, very simple. All I do is, when I get my coffee dyed paper, sometimes not all my coffee dye paper turns out very well. It gets rips and tears in it, or it has bumps or grooves, or something in it that I don't want to use for a normal page. So I save all those ones and use them to back my journal cards. So the back of the like one side of the coffee dye paper is perfect. It's just the other side that has like a marking I don't like, or a groove, or a crease or something that I don't like. And yeah, so that's what I will use those for. But when I was turning these into journal cards, I found I had more coffee dyed paper than floral images. So I just went back through the magazines and looked for more images and cut more out, and until I had enough to use up all of my coffee dye paper. Of course, I then later on coffee dyed more paper, and now I have a lot more paper to use to back onto journal cards as well. Anyway, I like these illustrated images as well. These are cool. I included some of these in the rose garden journal that I made, but yeah, I thought these could be journal cards as well, or even pockets. Just sew them onto the page as a pocket. So I hope this video gives you some ideas of what you can do with magazines. There's so many ways to use it, for personal journaling, to make cards, to make pages, to make covers, to make pockets. You can collage with them. You can fussy cut the flowers and use them sort of like stickers or ephemera pieces that go on top of collages, or just to decorate anything really, a page, an envelope, a journal card, or a tag. You can also, cut up these magazine images and turn them into straight journal cards and tags. So what I could do is get some manila folder, the way I normally make my journal cards and tags, and just if there's a beautiful standalone image, I can turn that into a tag. Just stick it directly down onto the manila folder, there's the word, and cut around it into the shape either of just a square or a rectangle journal card, or into the shape of a tag. I mean, you could even just get a whole page. If it's one of those pages that has lots of flowers everywhere on the page, then just stick that down on a sheet of coffee dye paper or whatever paper, a manila folder, and then turn it over, rule out your template of tags, cut it up, and you have beautiful floral tags on the other side. So many ways to use them. So I hope this gives you some inspiration to go out and get some magazines yourself, whether you can thrift them, find them at your op shops, or maybe you just want to go and buy some magazines from the news agency, especially if you're going to read them first and get use out of them that way, and then you get double use out of it to read it and then use the pictures. Another idea, if there's no magazines, you can look just for floral books. So at the op shop, or when you're thrifting, you can look at I don't know what you guys have, but usually where I go, the books are in sections. They'll have a gardening section, a children's book section, a fiction section, non-fiction, and cooking section, things like that. And so I'll just look in the gardening section. Like, not always. Sometimes they're all just jumbled up and all together, and some don't even have a gardening section. Just depends on the op shop, I guess. But that's something that I would do, is just go straight to the books. Always to the books first is whatever I do when I go to an op shop, is I go straight to the books first, and then I'll look at the different categories. So I'll go to the gardening book sections, and then I'll go to, like, my preference is like the vintage books, and I'll look at the covers as well to find some nice hardcover books that I could turn into journal covers. And I do enjoy looking at the children's books too, because they're what I'm looking for, illustrated books that have either the fairy theme or Disney princess or vintage. Little golden books, I often look through those as well. Just trying to think what other books. If it's a bigger op shop, they might have like a foreign languages section, and in that I'll look for the French books, because I love vintage French. And I think it's because, it's not really, but I was like trying to justify, it's like, why do I like vintage French so much? My middle name is a French name, Desiree. It means desired in French. And so it's like, oh, I really like that, because I have an actual connection to French, or the French language. And so it kind of makes a little bit of sense that I love vintage French so much. Otherwise, it doesn't really make any sense. I just like it. It just is something, who can tell why you like anything. But yeah, I just like that my middle name is French. That's fun. So yeah, I've cut out all my pictures there, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.